Chapter 70. The Pirates. Her opening attack is three-pronged: a blast of lightning from the sky, a brutal current carried through the muddy ground, and to try and distract from these more subtle techniques, she throws a lightning bolt to his face. He doesn't even bother deflecting and instead redirects all of it to gather in his hand. He flicks it back as a lightning bolt nearly 10 times the size of any one of its three components, and she deflects it into the sky. Another blast is thrown only to be caught in the water he controls to send it spinning back to her. She dodges but lets out a screech as the dodge means nothing, with the attack landing next to her and electrifying the mud and water she's standing in. And now, here is the downside of your storm fetish. There may be a great deal of electricity to direct, but there's just as much water to redirect it, he says, and another blast of lightning comes screaming down, only to strike a small river in the air that carries the power straight towards the lidus that brought it forth. With 4 of her bodies, she catches the power and shapes it into an enormous bright blue spear that she launches right back at Franklin, when it refuses to be redirected and evaporates the water nearest to it. His eyes widen, and he raises his hands to catch it instead. The sheer force of the storm spear skids him backwards as he begins shifting and churning the energy into a manageable ball. Electricity sheathed by plasma to keep it from being interfered with. Clever. I suppose with 12 schizophrenic minds, you might have a decent idea shake out every now and again. Schizophrenic? Do I look schizophrenic to you? She demands, suddenly insulted. Miss Fennel, your species, the lidus, have synchronized minds in each of the heads, connected through a biological shortwave axiom radio. Any slight differences are supposed to be smoothed out as you sleep, allowing you to express yourself fully. Your minds, on the other hand, are separated and they're just pawns, little malignant tumors that grew out of me. Me! I'm the original. The central torso screams at him before brutally attacking one of the more annoyed-looking side heads. Don't think I can't hear you. You're my slave, hear me? My slave, she screams. Hey girls, hold her still and I'll cut the bitch out. Ever wonder what it's like to not be a monster? Franklin offers, and there's a pause. Then the central body starts to laugh. He waits as the laugh goes from astounded to hysterical to maniacal to just plain overdrawn. The gills on the side of the larger body outright open up and begin letting out huge gouts of air to keep up the laughter, which has already gone past the point of parody and into the annoying. I've been too nice already, he notes before blurring forward and then vanishing in a teleport. The laughter is cut off with a scream of pain and shock. He's suddenly there, and a concussive level of strength rocks the lead body. The whole of her being flinches in pain. Interesting, Franklin notes, and then dodges the dozens of reflexive blasts of electricity by teleporting away. He reappears on the main body, crouched down and considering as both cameras zoom in on him. You're a very parasitic piece of work, Jim. He notes, and the infuriated central head turns to him with her now dislocated and no doubt broken jaw hangs loose. Forcing the other parts of your mind out and then bleeding off your fear and pain to them. He's gone as an enormous blast of lightning slams into the main body of the lidus, and he reappears near the camera. So it's the main head that's the cause of all your madness, a central tumor of cruelty and sadism. The obvious option is to rip it out and force the rest into a healing coma. A reset if I can take the bitch alive. But do I want to take prisoners? He asks himself before vanishing again in front of the massive lance of electrical power. He reappears while pacing his chin in his hand, clearly lost in thought. The next electrical lance crashes into him and shatters as he considers. You know what? I'll just beat you to a pulp, and if you survive, I'll carve out the worst parts and see if I can salvage a person out of your crazy. You couldn't on your best day and my worst, Jem screams at him as another blast of lightning crashes down. Before the light can return to normal, she screams in agony. He's wrestling with the central head and repeatedly ramming a K-bar into her around the chest and waist. The rest of the bodies rush him, and he jumps hard, holding the central part by the neck. There's a tearing sound, and he vanishes with the central torso, severed from the rest of the letus at the waist. He reappears some distance away with the severed torso, screaming and sobbing before he drives the K-bar into her forehead and twisting the blade to ensure that she's good and dead. The rest of the litus twitches and thrashes as he lets the corpse fall to the ground. He looks up into the rain to let it wash him of the blood from the evisceration he just performed with little more than a combat knife. The central body goes through a twitching session where it's very still, then moves, then is still as its controlling minds seem to go into complete war with one another. Then it goes very, very still, and the remaining heads turn to him at once. "I suppose I should thank you," she says from 11 mouths at once. "I would never have regained myself to—" The knife disappears from Franklin's hand and the entire litus skids backwards. 6 different hands holding back the weapon before she straightens herself and waves it at him. "Tisk, tisk, little Tret. We're unified now. That pain, that suffering and terror, it was exquisite. Thank you for sharing it with me. I'll be sure to let entire sectors know the decadent delight of purest agony." The gem state has won, and he only smiles. "Is something funny?" she asks as she works her tail to half slither, half swim through the muddy landscape. "Only that you made this much easier." He notes as she whips out her claws to slam into the mud around him, the filth parts, and refuses to touch him despite the rain pouring onto him with ease. "You see, I was worried that only one head was crazy and needed to be put down, so I was worried about how to spare the rest. But if you're all this crazy, well, I don't have to play nice now, do I?" He asks her, and the Gem Collective lean down to leer at him. "You are something special. What do you say to the idea of me tearing off your arms and legs, breaking your pelvis to give us a child, and then eating you alive?" she asks, as she smiles wide to reveal mouths full of fangs. "1 down, 11 to go," he replies calmly, and Gem flinches back and then begins to laugh from each of her different selves. Unlike the first round, it dies off quickly as 2 of them hold up the severed stump where the main torso once was. 11? Oh no, we are going to grow 2 more from the stump. I know. Put some hustle in it so you don't bore me to tears." He interrupts the 11 who glare at him before the stump erupts into 2 more bodes, one outright hissing at him and the other grabs him by the coat and lifts him up. "You impertinent little gah!" she screams in pain as her hands suddenly blacken and char, and he lands on his feet with ease, lightly brushing the small amount of soot off his coat as now the rain sizzles away into steam the moment it touches him. There is a ring in the mud and water where it's simply dry wherever he stands. Entire oceans worth of water are pouring down and he's bone dry. "I am immensely jealous," J3 whispers to his earpiece, and Franklin simply chuckles in response. "I'll teach you the trick later," Franklin whispers to his microphone, too lightly for Gem to catch. "You think you're funny?" Gem demands him in fury. "I think you should keep your hands off the merchandise. It's worth more than your life 1,000 times over. No, wait. Nothing times 1,000 is still nothing. Never mind, let's just get back to your death." He considers then one of the 13 slams into him with her fists glowing. He skids backwards as the energy refuses to dissipate. A trail of bone-dried dirt is left behind him before the water returns. By the time he dispels the sheer kinetic knot that the crazy witch slammed into him, the night is already growing brighter and brighter. He looks down from the small hill that he was knocked onto the top of, looking down upon her latest attempt to kill him without concern. Each of the 13 components of Gem are working in flawless concert to build an enormous electrical charge that glows bright as a star. It casts her shadow up and into the clouds. The whole mess resembles gigantic serpents slithering across the sky. It also casts Franklin's shadow against the clouds as well. He flexes a touch of the axiom and starts a chain reaction to see how much attention she's paying. His shadow suddenly has glowing eyes high above, and to his disappointment, she does not react to the controlled ball lightning. The ball of power builds, and the mass of serpents in the sky seem to grow only more numerous as the figure stands impassively. Then the snakes are no more as the ball is launched right at Franklin. He doesn't move. He doesn't dodge or deflect or dissipate the energy. He grabs onto it and it expands further before he hefts it over his head. Then it unravels upwards and slams into the sky above, shattering the clouds and exposing a peaceful night under a beautiful corona of stars with the two small moons, one blue and one pale yellow, gleaming above like colored spotlights. "Care to try again?" Franklin asks in the shocked stillness. "What?" she demands as she struggles to keep her breath. That attack had taken almost all the local axiom. Her heads were all swimming and feeling utterly helpless. "It is coming back, but slowly. Would you care to try again? I've used the axiom down to the barest dregs. No more spells for at least a minute." She snarls up at him, and he holds out his hand. From the clear sky above, a blast of lightning slams into his palm and his fingers snap shut to trap it. He regards the dancing, twitching, nearly screaming bolt of lightning before letting it go back into the sky. "If you say so, but if you're that frail, I'll just finish this now," Franklin remarks as he starts walking down the hill, his every step drying the terrain around him as clouds of steam scream upwards from the sheer thermal abuse he's offering to his surroundings. His heat aura is still in effect. "You're mocking me. This whole time you've been playing with me, an insult all the way through." She spits at him from all 13 heads. "Of course I am, and the only reason I haven't been constantly talking is that I have no idea where to start. Is it your obvious stupidity, or the senility? Maybe the immaturity or lack of modesty? Perhaps how your technique is so damn sloppy? Or maybe that you're just plain ugly?" "Ugly," she demands in a bellowing fury. "That's what sets her off," Franklin asks himself as she charges forward, pulling hard at the slowly returning axiom. "I'll never understand women," he remarks coolly.